Religion. So for this class, we're going to be reviewing the anthropology of religion. And unfortunately, because this is a summer course, we can't spend as much time as I would like to on it, but it's a really fascinating branch of anthropology. And if you are interested in it, please feel free to email me and I can recommend some pretty great books. But for this class, we're really talking about religion as an umbrella term to encompass the beliefs and rituals concerned with supernatural beings, power, and forces. And for anthropologists of religion, they're not examining one thing or a set of practices, but really looking at society through the lens, so sort of the viewpoint of how they are worshiping or doing practices or rituals to the sacred, the supernatural powers and forces. And sacred refers to sort of anything that's set apart from sort of the mundane everyday life. So something that is not natural but supernatural. So something that's beyond the natural world. And it involves then, looking at, for anthropologists of religion, they're looking at the range and diversity of human beliefs and practices. And then, what makes these beliefs and practices meaningful to people? What role does it serve? So, what roles does religion play in the organization of cultures and societies and everything else that goes into it? We really kind of have to owe the sort of the interest in the anthropology of religion to a sociologist, but we also claim him as well in anthropology, Emile Durkheim. And Emile Durkheim was a French sociologist, social psychologist, and philosopher. He was one who really sort of looked at particularly Protestant and Catholic communities and how that then affected those communities, the social structure, even to the point of their economic exchanges and systems. And for Emile Durkheim, he defines religion as a unified system of beliefs and practices relative to sacred things. That is to say that things that are set apart and forbidden, so things that are apart from the natural world as well as forbidden. We can't have access to it physically. And therefore it involves the beliefs and practices which unite into one single moral community, one sort of religious community called a church. You could also call it any other sort of religious institution. All those who adhere to them, religion should be an immensely good thing. So really focus for Emile Durkheim is that religion being this unified system, this collective force that draws people together into communities. And for him, he sort of defines, again, religion is setting things apart in the world. So things that are sacred, so set off from the ordinary, set off from the natural world. And then the profane, which is the natural world, the everyday life, our mundane life. Every society has a sacred. Sacred is a broad umbrella term of what that means. But that but it varies from society to society of what that sacred is and how do you access that sacred and what beliefs and rituals and practices and all of that. And let's get back to our old friend Clifford Geertz. I think we know Clifford from a couple lectures back. And Clifford, also studied religion, particularly in South Asia. And he defines religion as a system of symbols which acts to establish powerful, pervasive, and long-lasting moods and motivations in men and women by formulating conceptions of a general order of existence and clothing these conceptions with such an aura of actuality that the moods and motivations seem uniquely realistic. Okay, let's now break this down. So, what Clifford is saying is that religion is, first of all, a system of symbols. So it means that it's a subset of culture, meaning that it's a part of culture. Religion is a part of culture, which then acts to establish powerful, pervasive, and long-lasting moods and motivation in men and women. So therefore he's saying that religion provides people with a general orientation to each other, the world, the past, and the future. So and again, religion sort of sets our idea of the world and how we are and how we relate to one another and how we should act towards one another, you know? Part 3, formulating conceptions of a general order of existence. So therefore, religion contains a cosmology. Cosmology is basically refers to the history and evolution of the universe based on religious mythology of a specific tradition. So it's telling about how the world began, how our solar system began, all of that, right? And we can talk a lot about the birth of the world, through many sort of religious systems, and religious communities have their sort of their creation myth, right? And 4, clothing these conceptions with such an aura of actuality, meaning that religion seems implicitly true. Some may seem a bit hokey or hard to take literally, like, oh, this actually happened to someone. This doesn't seem like it could actually happen to someone. But but what religion does is that even these sort of acts that seem, so far-fetched, or even like ideas and beliefs of how certain gods could be this way, or a certain god or whatever, even though they seem sort of far-fetched, they seem true to our heart. So implicit true, that, well, regardless or not if they'd make sense, they are true to us. And lastly, number 5, the moods and motivations seem uniquely realistic. And therefore then, religion provides a sense of truth, provides people with a, of course this is true attitude to what they believe and what they are doing. It provides a sense of direction as well as truth, that this is the way that it should be, this is the way I should act, this is the way that the world is, and who am I in it, and all of that. So religion provides a really phenomenal basis to majority of people in the world, as a way of not only defining their world around them, but who they are and what truths they hold to be true. So with all that being said about religion, let's talk about it some more. And of course, I think it should be stated, and I think we already know this now, that there's a wide variety of religion, right? There's a wide diversity of religion out there, as well as a wide amount of variation within a particular religious sect. Just even thinking about Christianity, like just the broad umbrella term of Christianity, and you can talk about a lot of variation, not only between different religious sects, but also even just like, what it means to be a Baptist in, Michigan might be very different if you were living in a part in the South or somewhere out in the West. It's going to be a lot of diversity and variation. And that gets into our old term that we talked about before, imagined community, meaning that people of a similar faith around the world sharing a connection, feeling as though they belong to one another, even though they might not know every single person who are that religious group, they still feel this connection. They still feel that they have this community with one another, this sort of bond between one another, whether or not that's actually even based on, physical reality of being a person. Another thing about religion is that it's a social phenomenon, meaning that religion is a social product, and this is something that might be hard for people to think about, but the truth of the matter is that religion serves social purposes, and it's also very much framed by the society that it lives in. So therefore then religion is a social product. And therefore understanding religion and religious experience is central to also understanding humanity and the human world and our social world. Religion is also, again, a cultural product as well. It's, it feeds in both. It's both, shapes culture as well as it is a part of culture. You can't separate culture and religion. And that gets into sort of really definition, sort of the you can separate the definitions of religion, where it's, religion is, a formalized or organized religions, and then religion, which is the broader sort of umbrella term that I've been talking about, which are, behaviors and beliefs which exist in society, even if they don't stand out as separate and clearly demarcated spheres. So, and that's really important for us. If you are interested in researching a particular religious group or community, is to sort of talk about it both in a large general sense. Religion is sort of this idea of beliefs and behaviors that, that people use to talk to the divine and all of that, and then a religion, the specific formulations and sort of cultural practices for that particular group. The role of religion. So, why do we have religion? That's an interesting question. Why does it that, and something that, I think a lot of us have, in anthropology as well as even archaeology and other places, talked about what's the role of religion? Why do we have it? And in your book, you've read about Sir Edward Burnett Tylor, and what he sort of explains it as that people try to understand the conditions and events they could not explain by reference to daily experience. So, such as natural events like that they didn't have the scientific knowledge of, such as lightning or floods or death or even or all these sort of natural occurrences. Now, Sir Edward Taylor, and you also read about it, talked about the progression or evolution of religion from being sort of primitive, sort of animalistic, to then, more complex, into the most complex being, the major dominant religions of today: Christianity, Islam, Judaism, etc. Again, though, I think that sort of the talk of evolution and progression is something that we need to be careful, because there are many people within this world that have, that do practice animism and different sort of other beliefs that Tylor would consider primitive, and to label their beliefs as primitive is incredibly, I would say, racist and wrong. And it also just doesn't show that, people don't progress from one religion to the other. There's no such thing as an evolution in that. It's just really to the specific, community of why they have the religion they have, and, there's multiple factors of why that is. And no religion is, if you wanted to look at it from an anthropological sense, no religion is better than the other one. It's just really sort of looking at the specific sort of conditions of and practices of that particular religion. And we owe that sort of sense of getting away from that evolutionary sort of talk of religion to Franz Boas, where he's sort of talking about that anthropology should not be focusing on the origins of religion or the evolution of religion, but how religions are spread through diffusion, the mixing of cultural elements from one society to another through long, prolonged periods of contact over time, and what functions do religions serve in society. So really, like, what is the role of religion? Like, what does this religion provide to this community? And, religion can provide a lot, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. We also need to owe considerable recognition to another old favorite friend of ours, Bronislaw Malinowski. And Bronislaw Malinowski, he sort of said that, religion functions, with practicality, meaning that, he was studying people in the Trobriand Islands, in South Asia, and while they were practicing, magic and all these other sort of what he would consider very different religious beliefs from his own, instead of looking at it as all these primitive beliefs, oh, they're so backwards, oh, how could they not think of it in a different way? In fact, he's looked at it and be like, as much as, even though how different their religion is from mine, their religious functions, really serve a really prominent role for that community, and also help that community survive the tough conditions they are living in. And that really what we want to talk about, what we want to call religion, makes sense only as part of a larger coherent whole, meaning that you can't just like separate a religious tradition or belief outside of the community and culture that it practices in. You have to look at it as part of a larger intersection of what's going on for that particular community, as well as that particular community contact to other communities as well. And that, religion is not stagnant. It's not set in stone. In fact, religion it changes a lot through contact, through as well through changing of environment and all of that. But there is no sort of single narrative of change, like we started from this and then we evolved to that. It's more that just sort of the daily contact over prolonged periods of time between other communities, with other religions, with other sort of conditions, causes within that religion and beliefs and practices of that community. And that beliefs and practices are mutually reinforcing. They serve a purpose for a community. And that, you must understand religious beliefs within the total context of the physical and cultural environment. So you can't separate them. You can't separate religion from the environment that it's located in. And I'm talking about the physical environment and as well as the cultural environment. And you have to look at it as a larger sort of system that's much connected to other factors. Very large umbrella terms, but the kinds of religion. So, a religion constitutes the total set of beliefs, practices, and associated symbols and interactions between persons, so human and non-human, that are concerned with the explanation and understanding of the cosmos, a person's place in it, coherence of the cosmos, channeling of emotions, social cohesiveness, sense of effectiveness, and ability to cope with life-changing events such as death, illness, and misfortune, as well as the maintenance of this general sense of order, as well as, your position in society. So that's what religion is. And these terms down below are going to be umbrella terms, which are, meaning that these are sort of general collection of different types of religions, but knowing that there's incredible amount of diversity in these large umbrella terms. So the first one is animism, and that's really, the beliefs in souls and spirits. The next is totemism, which is the religious practice centered around animals, plants, or other aspects of the natural world, held to be ancestral or closely identified with a group and its individuals. Polytheism, which is a belief in multiple gods, and monotheism, the belief in a single all-powerful deity. So now let's get into magic and rituals. And magic always seems to be a topic that a lot of students are always a bit fascinated by. So what is magic? Magic is the supernatural techniques intended to accomplish specific aims. So when we talk about magic, especially in the United States, there's a lot of TV shows around magic. So I think, unfortunately, we talk about magic in a Hollywood sense of witches and all of that. And therefore, then it seems like something that is only exists in TV and fairy tale stories. But in fact, magical practices are very well common element of many religious beliefs and practices in many cultures. Magic is actually not something that's rare. It's actually pretty commonly practiced around the world. And again, magic is a broad term for variety of practices and techniques to accomplish specific aims. And magic is based on the belief that supernatural powers can be influenced through the use of ritual formulas. So you can speak to the divine, the supernatural, through these magical forces, and then therefore then you can influence them to help you, to bring you luck, or to protect you from harm, or to even you can even talk about harming others or harming your enemies. And you can separate magic to sympathetic magic, which uses the representational objects such as dolls. So I think all of us are pretty much familiar with voodoo dolls, of dolls practiced by hoodoo and voodoo practitioners in the Caribbean and Latin America, as well as in parts of south of the United States. And voodoo dolls can be used for good or bad, so there's that. But and then the next one is contagious magic, where it's a directed relationship between ritual and the body. So this is the use of like the subject's hairs or fingernails. So an example can be in the top right corner. I have a magic practice happening there, and around March, every March, around 30, in a place that's located 30 miles outside of Bangkok, people gather. These are Buddhist practitioners gather to the Wat Bang Phar Buddhist temple, and they get practitioners can get a magical tattoo. This tattoo, has a sacred design, and devotees believe that the tattoos are magical, can ward off physical harm, give good luck, and have healing powers. So that's a magical practice, okay? So hopefully it gets us away from the Hollywood sense of magic to really sort of look at the, just a tattoo to ward off bad luck. I think many of us probably can talk about magic in the sense of, old wise tales of like giving people the evil eye or putting protection, like little rituals like that. Those are magic. That's magic is. It's not the Hollywood version of magic. And with magic, then, you have to also talk about rituals. And rituals are the behavior that is formed, stylized, repetitive, and stereotyped, performed earnestly as a social act. Rituals are held at set times and places and have liturgical orders. So, rituals, why I'm putting magic and rituals together is because, and a lot of times they're blended between one another in many communities around the world. But for the most part, all religions have rituals. Rituals from from the amount of how you pray to maybe how you sing a song in church to how you enter church. We all have a set of stylized, repetitive practices when we practice a religion, and so therefore rituals are a part of that. Magic, of course, is something that goes a little bit beyond rituals, but again, they also bleed into one another in many communities. And we have to talk about it also serves a really big part about the rites of passage. And these are the culturally defined activities associated with the transition from one life stage or place to another. For the majority of societies around the world, rites of passages form a core part of the social world. You can't, become an adult without going through a rite of passage. And therefore, if you can't become adult, you can't have children, you can't hold property, they do have really strong significance for many communities around the world. And with rites of passage, you have to talk about liminality, which is the critical, important, marginal, or in-between phase of a rite of passage. So somebody who's in between, becoming an adult or becoming an elder or anything like that. And liminality also refers to leaving one status and then joining another status. So whether that's an age group status or to, somebody who decides to want to become a priest or a religious leader, they might have to go through a rite of passage, whether that's through education, whether that's through saying certain prayers, what you have you, and they then leave one status, themselves as a normal, regular person, to then, a figure or a magician or whatever. And oftentimes, with these sort of rites of passages, individuals are withdrawn from society or the religious community, and then in the second phase, then once they've left their status, they then join another. The third phase of that then is that they re-enter society, having completed the rite that changes their status. It's very much collective, meaning that passage rites are something that is not only undergone by the individual, but it's shared by and supported by the whole community. So I've got two sort of examples of rites of passage. One is the Maasai Unuto ceremony, and the Maasai are semi-nomadic people inhabiting Kenya and northern Tanzania. And the Unuto ceremony is performed by members of the age group, basically men who are tenured warriors, and it marks the status of a warrior transitioning to a senior warrior. And once they're senior warriors, they then can marry and then have children and settle down. And part of that ceremony is for them when they're out being warriors, they're living outside of the community, and they grow their hair very long. Once they then transition into being senior warriors, they cut their hair and they put this really beautiful red dye on their heads as part of their sort of their their rite of passage from changing from one status to another. Now they are senior warriors. Now they can have children. Now they can raise families. Another one that probably many of you are familiar with is a quinceanera. And a quinceanera is is a celebration of a girl's 15th birthday in many parts of Latin America as elsewhere as in the United States, and this birthday is celebrated differently from any other as it marks the transition from childhood to young womanhood. This celebration, however, varies significantly across countries, with celebrations in some countries taking on, for example, more religious overtones than others. But these are both two examples of rites of passage that are very much supported by the community and serve a necessary function within a community. Talking about then religion serving a role in the community, we need to talk about social control. So, magic, religion, rituals, all of that, they serve a real purpose. They provide meanings in people's lives. They help people manage anxiety and increase their personal order. So basically increase their sense of how the world is set, and so they feel safe in their sort of world. They reinforce the social order, and they instigate social and cultural change. Magic, religion, and rituals provide both solace, retribution, and they ease anxiety. They can also create anxiety and a sense of insecurity and danger. You know, I think many talk about how religion can also, stir up people's emotions to the point of both positive as well as negative. And therefore, religion has a big religion, magic, rituals, all of that have, an incredible amount of power for mobilization, moving people into a direction for a certain goal. So religion can work by getting people to join and mobilizing their emotions, creating a sense of shared joy, meaning, experience, belonging, and commitment. Religion can be really helpful force to the betterment of people's lives. Religion can also cause a lot of violence to happen. It can mobilize in people's fear and uncertainty, and that can then, cause a lot of harm as well. Religion also, in a way of being a social controlling agent, offers rewards and punishments. It creates a code of ethics and morality to guide behavior. So if you follow these ways, you're going to be granted certain things, certain awards, and if you don't do it this way, you get certain punishments. I think we all kind of know this. The kinds of religion. So, religion exists in particular societies, and cultural differences show up systematically in religious beliefs and practices. Through time, a culture's religious beliefs and practices persist, but also through incorporating new elements. So we've talked about this before, that religion does change through social interaction. And that, many religions are, adopted by other groups, and then in that adoption become transformed because they get selected. They bring in the other elements of their community or social culture, all of that, into that religion. An example of this is Santa Claus up in the corner. Santa Claus and sort of the idea of winter and the Christmas tree and the holly. These are all Northern European pagan elements that were then, through sort of the expansion of Christianity, were then incorporated within Christianity rituals and practices. So, you have these sort of Northern European pagan elements within now Christianity, and it's a part of Christianity. For many people, they practice, they have Santa Claus, they have the Christmas tree, they have all these other sort of pagan elements within Christianity. So that's just an example of a religion coming, and as it comes into contact with a particular community, It also kind of changes and blends, parts of that community's whatever cultural, religious sort of traditions within its own, and then it changes. And that's where it really sort of shows the dynamic process of religion, that it's not just this one thing that stays the same, but also changes throughout time. Oftentimes, the more complex the structural system of a particular religion, usually the more structurally and politically complex the society is. And by that, I don't mean that, of evolution, but the fact that, in order to have like a large religious institution, such as Vatican City, which is an entire city that is run by the Catholic Church, also need to have a political and structurally complex system to support it, right? And you need to support that structure. You need to have persons or bodies of persons who are fully reserved to serve out spiritual needs, and therefore then if they're not working to support themselves because they're religious figures, then you need to then have the community be supporting them whether through provisions, monetary donations, or taxes. So basically what I'm saying here is that large religious institutions also require large um, socially and politically complex and structured societies to support them. This is just some fun facts before I leave you. Worldwide, more than 8 in 10 people identify with a religious group. And the Pew Research Center and Forum on Religion and Public Life provide really interesting facts and figures. There's about 5.8 billion religiously affiliated adults and children around the globe, representing about 84% of the world's population. And it finds that, with the surveys, and again, this is like 2012, 2010, you see you can look at the number of Christians worldwide, so 31.5%, Muslim 23.2%, Hindus 15%, as well as, in addition, there's more than 400 million people, 6%, who practice various folk or traditional religions, including African traditional religions, Chinese folk religions, Native American religions, and Australian Aboriginal religions. As well as, slightly less than 1% of the global population belong to other groups, including, the Baha'i faith, Jainism, Sikhism, Shinto, Taoism, Tenriko, Wicca, Zoroastrianism, just to mention a few. Overwhelmingly, Hindus and Christians tend to live in countries where they are the majority. Fully 90% of all Hindus live in the world's 3 Hindu majority countries. And nearly 9 in 10 Christians, so 87%, are found in the world's 157 Christian majority countries. Though by smaller margins, most Muslims, 73%, and religious unaffiliated people, 71%, also live in countries in which they are the predominant religious groups. Muslims are a majority in 49 countries, including 19 of the 20 countries in the Middle East and North Africa. The religiously unaffiliated make up a majority of the population in 6 countries, of which China is by far the largest. And what's really interesting is that most members of the other major religious groups live in countries in which they are the minority. So 7 in 10 Buddhists, so 72%, for example, live as religious minorities. Just 3 in 10, 28%, live in the 7 countries where Buddhists are the majority, which is Bhutan, Burma, Cambodia, Laos, Mongolia, Sri Lanka, and Thailand. Israel is the only country with a Jewish majority. There are no countries where members of other religions, such as Baha'is, Jains, Shintoists, Wiccans, etc., make up the majority of the population. There are also no countries where people who identify with the folk or traditional religions are the majority. However, it's important to state that with folk or traditional religions, many practice both folk or religious traditions as well as a majority religion like Christianity. So if you travel around, especially in countries in Africa and Latin America, there's, people might identify themselves as Christian or Muslim, but then they're also practicing their traditional folk beliefs and rituals and practices in religion. So again, This is an interesting look at the world, especially from a religious lens. But know that it's not also monolithic, meaning that that everyone practices it, Christianity the same or Hinduism completely the same. There's a lot of blending and variation, and that's always a state. Right, so thank you for staying with me. This was a little bit of a longer lecture, but let's get into the key terms. The first one is religion, which is the beliefs and rituals concerned with supernatural beings, powers, and forces. Sacred is what is set off from the ordinary, so anything supernatural or out of the natural world. Profane is the mundane world, or everyday life, or you could also call it the natural world. Animism is the belief in souls and spirits. Totemism is religious practices centered around animals, plants, or other aspects of the natural world, held to be ancestral or closely identified with a group and its individuals. Polytheism is the belief in multiple gods. Monotheism is the belief in a single all-powerful deity. Magic is the supernatural techniques intended to accomplish specific aims. And rituals is the behavior as formal, stylized, repetitive, and stereotyped, performed earnestly as a social act. Rituals are held at set times and places and have liturgical orders. And lastly, liminality, the critical, important, marginal, or in-between phase of a rite of passage. Okay, thanks so much.